Good early afternoon, and welcome to Bessie. I'd like to kick off the school innovation and turnaround committee meeting. Can I get a roll call, please?
Dr. Volpe? Here. Dr. Volpe is present. Mr. Castile? Mr. Castile is present. Dr. Davis?
Here.
Dr. Davis is present. Ms. Ellis?
Here.
Ms. Ellis is present. Mr. Garvey?
Here.
Mr. Garvey is present. Ms. Holloway?
Here.
Ms. Holloway is present. Mr. Mellery?
Here.
Mr. Mellery is present. Mr. Morris?
Here.
Mr. Morris is present. Ms. Orange Jones? Here. Ms. Orange Jones is present. Mr. Rock?
Here.
Mr. Rock is present. Ms. Gautier? Ms. Gautier is not present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. First item, please.
Your consent agenda is ready for approval.
Right, can I get a motion, please? Holloway, second. Ms. Ellis? Is there any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Next item, please.
First item is on page 18, item 3.1, consideration of a report on types 2, 4, and 5 charter contracts and requests for amendments. The recommendation is to approve the material amendment.
Can I get a motion? Dr. Davis, Ms. Holloway, thank you. Superintendent, do we have anything on this?
Yes, sir.
All right, do we have any cards? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, is there any opposition? No opposition, motion passes. Next item, please.
Your next item is on page 25, item 3.2, consideration of the 2023-24 request for applications timeline and common charter application framework. The recommendation is to approve the timeline and framework, authorizing the LDOE to amend the timeline as needed, noting that Bessie will be notified of any changes.
Can I get a motion? Mr. Miller? Second. Mr. Garvey? Superintendent?
This just sets the timeline for the upcoming year, Mr. Morris.
All right, do we have any public comment? Hearing none. All right, is there any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Next item, please.
Your next item is on page 63, item 3.3, consideration of overview presentations and public input regarding Bessie authorized type 2 charter application proposals submitted in response to the 2022-2023 charter school request for applications. The recommendation is to receive the report and updated backup has been distributed.
Can I get a motion? Ms. Ellis, Mr. Miller, Superintendent?
Yes, sir, thank you. This process for today will give Bessie their first opportunity to hear from a couple of applicants in the present cycle that have a desire to open a type of charter in the state of Louisiana. They have essentially 5 minutes to share their proposal with the board. This is really not a time for question and answering because this is not the meeting in which the board will make a decision on their charter. This is just an opportunity for the board to have an introductory understanding of their intent with their charter. And so at this point, I'll turn it over to Mr. Day, and he may want to make some introductions and bring up the first applicant.
Yes, absolutely. Good afternoon, board members. As Dr. Brumley just said, Bessie policy says that prior to approving a type 2, 4, or 5 school, Bessie shall hold a public meeting for the purpose of considering the proposal and receiving public input. That's what this is today. We have 2 groups that will be coming before you. The first is the Academy of Collaborative Education, and then they will be followed by Louisiana Connections Academy. The idea here is 5-minute presentations and then questions from board members if necessary. So we will go ahead and bring up our friends from the Academy of Collaborative Education. The slides are on this computer down here. I don't know how to get it up there. All right, and I'll turn it over to these ladies.
Just as a point of clarity, they are introducing, you're welcome to ask questions, board members obviously, but there will be that moment when their actual application's up for consideration in their next meeting.
If you would, please introduce yourself for the record. Thank you.
My name is Joellen Freeman. I'm the co-founder and executive director of ACE. And this is my co-founder, Maddie Cannon. Good afternoon. My name is Joellen Freeman, and I am the co-founder and executive director of Academy of Collaborative Education, known to us as ACE. We are here today with the board president and founding principal to introduce this innovative Type 2 elementary school charter that will serve children on the autism spectrum. Autism is a developmental disability caused by differences in the brain. children with autism may behave, learn, and interact in different ways than their neurotypical peers. I'm accompanied today by my partner, co-founder, and the mother of the inspiration of ACE, Maddie Cannon. Maddie and I have worked side by side for the last 2.5 years to research and design this model. Accompanying us is our founding principal, Jessica Burkett, who has dedicated her career to special education, coaching, and mentoring new teachers with an emphasis on autism. It is an honor to be here today to represent our community in Northeast Louisiana and families who seek this educational environment like ACE that offers the academic and therapeutic learning model their children need to make the gains in their educational day and beyond. ACE will be located in the heart of Monroe, and it will be open to kindergarten through 5th grade students with a total enrollment of 96. The school will primarily draw its students from the Monroe City area and the 7 surrounding parishes. We will remain available as a school choice outside of our region for those families where ACE may be the only educational option for their child. Children on the spectrum are often defined by their challenging behaviors, lack of communication, repetitive movements, and limited interests. But there's so much more to the spectrum. The ACE model offers specialized, tailored programming to each student and integrated into the learning environment by trained staff so that learning takes place on a daily basis. ACE is the only autism-based charter school in Northeast Louisiana that offers evidence-based therapeutic services in the classroom during academic learning. In the absence of these services, parents must make the decision to check their children out of school for the behavioral interventions they are unable to get integrated into their classrooms. Many students in self-contained classrooms do not access Tier 1 curricula, only supplemental. Students within their grade level learning with neurotypical peers, they experience lack of behavioral and communication supports they need to fully engage into their educational day. ACE is designed specifically to layer these services into the classroom to ensure each student reaches their full academic potential no matter the level of spectrum disorder. This is a proven model, and students that participate in this model exhibit gains in ELA and math compared to students who do not have specialized programming. ACE will offer 2 academic programs. Our academic program for students that are at or near grade level, and an essential academic program for those students that require additional learning strategies, supports to acquire the foundational skills that are crucial to academic success. A special education teacher, paraprofessional, and a behavior therapist collaborate to deliver the therapeutic support to maximize core academic gains and life skills that create lifelong learners and independent individuals in our communities. Autism knows no racial, ethnic, religious, gender, or financial boundaries, and ACE seeks to serve these children and their families regardless of background. The CDC states that 1 in 36 children are diagnosed with autism. And with over 35,000 elementary school students in Northeast Louisiana, this means that close to 1,000 students may be diagnosed with autism. Without this tuition-free model, students with autism are left behind in our region.
My son Ace is 1 in 36. He is the inspiration and driving force behind this ACE school design. Ace is nonverbal and has challenging behaviors. And like many parents in our region, my husband and I had to make the decision to disrupt his academic day for private ABA services we were unable to have integrated into his classroom. Joellen and I have toured successful autism schools across the country and spoken to parents across our region who seek this type of educational option. ACE was founded and designed to change the narrative by empowering students with autism to become active and independent individuals with rather than be viewed as disabled. ACE serves all students on the autism spectrum because learning knows no bounds. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any comments? Okay, we do have some public comment.
Got Brenda Johnson. She supports the documentation and wishes to speak. We've got Shantae Johnson, who also supports the documentation and would also like to speak. If you could come to the table. Welcome to Bessie. If you would just give us your name for the record, please.
Shantae Johnson. Whatever, I know your members.
Check and see if the green light is on. If you go hit the button, the green light should come on. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Maybe pull it a little closer to you. There you go. Give it a try.
All right. I'm Shantae Johnson. This is my son Tristan. I'm located in Monroe, Louisiana, and he attends Monroe City School. He's in Monroe City School System. I come before you as not only a dedicated mother, but also an advocate for those other parents and families in North Louisiana that children have autism. I have a few questions, and you guys don't have to answer them. Just how many of you actually have students that are in the public school system right now? How many of you have family members that are on autism spectrum? How many of you fear, I'm not going to say fear, how many of you actually look forward to your children starting the school year and actually ending the school year learning such the goals that they were supposed to learn for the academic school year? Now, my last question is, how many of you lay up at night and worry and fear that you have failed your child because they will not have the correct or adequate, efficient academic experience within their lifetime? That's my biggest fear with Tristan right now. The last couple of years have been hard. Given COVID, that has been everybody. But we have not been able to bounce back. These children have suffered so much. They are not able to accomplish as much as their peers are. And so Tristan is in a self-contained class, unlike some of his other peers that are on autism spectrum. So we are having to not have the same curriculum as his peers of his age, but another supplemental curriculum. But at the same time, that's a struggle because it still doesn't do justice as to how these children may possibly learn. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brenda Johnson. I am the Nana to Tristan and the mother of Shantae. I'm here to ask for your support for ACE. I ask for this support because I'm supporting my daughter. Not only am I supporting my daughter, but I'm supporting Tristan. Tristan is a smart individual that learns different. He learns different. I take nothing from the educators in the Monroe City School System. I take nothing from any teacher that's in the public system. However, there needs to be some changes in the system when it comes to children with disabilities and autism. We've struggled since Tristan has been diagnosed, but we support anything and everyone that touches his life. We have to, because if we don't focus on him and the things that's needed for him, then we have failed him. It's not just about Tristan. It is about all of the children that's in North Louisiana that could benefit from the use of having ACE being established in our area. Tristan, along with all the other students, need to be a part of this school, this community, and we have to give them special, and I say special attention. I'm not saying special education. I'm saying special attention because they need more than what I would need when I was going to school. So I openly support the establishment of this school. My representative, Katrina Jackson, supports it. Senator Jackson, along with other educators that did not and could not come down and support it themselves. I think you all have probably received emails from community support that we've asked to support it. So please read those emails, read those stories, and we could tell you stories galore today, but we don't have time to listen. But thank you for the opportunity, and hopefully this will be effective.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for making the trip to Baton Rouge. Members, any comment? All right. Mr. Day, I think you have the floor.
While Mr. Day comes up, I just want to thank everyone engaged with these applications for considering doing work in the state of Louisiana. And it's a lot of work to put an application like this together. We know it's a real thorough process. So I'm just saying thank you for putting yourself out there and putting yourself through this process.
Excellent. All right, at this time, I would like to invite the Louisiana Connections Academy team up for their presentation.
Welcome to Bessie. If you would, just tell us your name for the record, and you can get started.
My name is Glenda Jones, and I'm the board president of Louisiana Connections Academy.
And I'm Shonda Sanchez, interim school leader.
Good afternoon, and greetings on behalf of the governing body of Louisiana Connections Academy. As I said, my name is Glenda Jones, board president, and I have with me today Shonda Sanchez, our interim school leader. Thank you so much for this opportunity to present our charter proposal to your committee. Over the next 5 minutes, we will share a school designed to help close academic and performing gaps for diverse learners of all backgrounds and cultures. This model also mitigates disruptions in learning. The board has chosen a proven education service provider that will serve at the discretion of the board. We believe our mission and vision articulate clearly our desire to prepare students to meet unique education and life goals. Because traditional education methods cannot always meet the needs of every student, online is a viable alternative. We have heard from parents about their desire for more school choice. We have support from across the state. In fact, we have supporters here with us today. We'd like to ask them now to stand to show you their support for our school. LACA's administrative office will be intentionally located within the St. Helena School District due to its proximity to several large student populations that LACA aims to serve, as well as our openness to work with the district itself. LACA is intentionally growing responsibly over time, serving 350 students statewide in grades 6 through 8 in year 1, and hopefully expanding to grades K through 12, serving 4,000 students by year 5. LACA's target student population is reflective of Louisiana's diverse student populations, and our next slides outlining our school model will highlight how we intend to meet the needs of our students and provide them with unique and enriching opportunities.
LACA will help close the academic and performance gaps with wraparound services that support every student collectively and individually. LACA will offer a high-quality, innovative curriculum on an easy-to-use platform. Our teachers will be state certified in all core courses and will have access to teaching methodologies and professional development based on 20+ years of demonstrated success. LACA will provide the whole child wraparound services as well as an intentional focus on supporting student engagement and school culture. LACA's instructional model will improve student learning by utilizing a curriculum and instructional program focused on the acquisition of discrete technical and academic skills. LACA will also endeavor to offer quality online Tier 1 core courses for newly added grade levels each year and has already begun the process for middle school. Unique to this model, LACA will also have a 1-week extended school year. During C week, Students making adequate progress academically will complete project-based and experiential learning projects resulting in an exploration badge. It is also an opportunity for remediation and intervention for struggling students and a time to reemphasize the importance of state testing. Throughout the school year, students will have an opportunity to earn innovative engagement badges for participating in clubs and activities, attending state testing, active participation in live lessons, and more to build a strong school culture and engage student body. LACA will provide a learning experience that develops the academic, career readiness, and life skills needed to enter a changing world with confidence. To include its career exploration and community platform, provides interest and aptitude assessments that connect students with exploration opportunities that align with their individual results, as well as exposure to a variety of jobs and experts within the clusters of interest. Career pathways and skills badging provide access to a variety of pathways which prepare students to earn industry certifications with access to robust dual enrollment opportunities. Through LACA's Career Network, the school will facilitate mentorships, internships, and project-based learning opportunities that expose students to post-secondary experiences and guide them to informed decisions about their futures beyond high school.
The LACA Board believes its charter application meets or exceeds all charter law provisions and is committed to ensuring the school is accountable for all state requirements and will be good stewards of public resources. Each child is unique, and I believe we should offer opportunities for success to all children, and this is the goal of LACA. On behalf of the board, we thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. Members, any comments? All right, I think we have some public comments to share. I'm going to go through the list of individuals that support the recommendation but do not wish to speak. So supporting the recommendation but not wishing to speak, Chandra Sanchez Diaz, Jennifer Wells, Simon St. Pierre, James St. Pierre, Maddie Catania, Patty Gregoire, Paul Dauphin, Amy Wells, Christy Johnson, Charles Edwards, and Candace Johnson. And we have a few folks that also support the documentation but wish to speak. So Dana Henry, and Rika, and Matthew Calais. If you guys would approach the desk, we'd like to hear your comments. Go ahead and have a seat at the table, and you want to look for the green button on the microphone. Go ahead and identify yourself for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Richard St. Pierre, and I'm the father of my son, Joey St. Pierre, who was going to be here, but due to last minute work appointment, had a meeting to attend. So he prepared a speech, and I'm going to read his speech on his behalf. Dear Chairman Morris and members of the Bessie Committee, I appear before you today to offer support for Louisiana Connections Academy. I attended International Connections Academy, now called Pearson's Online Academy, in 10th through 12th grade. I have dyslexia, ADHD, and a couple of other learning differences. In-person schools did not work for me, and I tried a few of them. By the beginning of 10th grade, I was begging my parents to let me drop out of school. My mom enrolled me in Connections Academy. My life changed. Much to my surprise, I discovered that I really am smart and just needed school served in a different way. These are just some of the things that made me successful in earning my high school diploma. Pearson lessons are excellent in the way learning is presented, practiced, and reviewed often. The lesson checks help me know when I needed more practice, and the different kinds of tests like portfolios gave me a chance to show what I knew in many ways. The instructional videos and lessons were very helpful, and I could watch them as many times as I needed through the semester. Live lessons were helpful, and I began to see teachers as supportive helpers rather than tormentors. My teachers called me on the phone, were available for office hours, and took time to get to know me as a person. They had a way of jumping in with help right when I needed it. I could get up from my chair and give my body the movement it needed between lessons, and even pause in lessons if necessary. I had access to my classes 24/7. This allowed me to spread out my work even during weekends if needed. It also allowed me to have a part-time job in the mornings, which looked great on my resume and landed me my present job. If you're thinking it's all covered because Louisiana has other online schools, I respectfully ask you to reconsider. I have friends who attended other programs. They did not get half of the support I received. All but one ended up returning to and struggling through their former schools. Our state needs the Connections Academy model. As a service to students like me and to parents who cannot afford tuition at the private Connections Academy school I attended, I hope you will approve this choice for kids in Louisiana, and I thank you for considering my request.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Matthew Calle, and I have a prepared statement as well. Good afternoon, everyone. I also would like to speak in favor of chartering a new Louisiana Connections Academy. I'm a big proponent and advocate of school choice, and I also believe that one of the best ways to improve education here in the state of Louisiana, which I know everybody here is, this is obviously a puzzle we all want to solve, and in the United States, is to offer students and parents choices in how to best serve the educational and pedagogical needs of children and adolescents. Here in Louisiana, I know as Ms. Jones had just said in her presentation a few moments ago, I know we've had a number of situations that have led to disruptions over the years in schooling for large populations of students, whether that's hurricanes, floods, the COVID-19 pandemic, or of course yesterday, an incident here at East Baton Rouge where classes had to be canceled due to some personnel shortages. And I think virtual schooling kind of helps allow for both the flexibility and rigor for students to learn at high standards of learning while minimizing all of these disruptions and inconveniences that may arise due to natural and other disasters or threats. Furthermore, I also know that Connection Schools offer students the opportunity to network with other students with field trips and other extracurriculars throughout the state, and even the nation, to form lasting friendships and relationships, and of course, no pun intended, connections that may be hard to come by in brick and mortar schools. And I'm also very much aware of the success of the former Louisiana Connection School here that existed during the early to mid-2010s. And not to mention, as Mr. St. Pierre just commented, some of the older students may even have that flexibility to participate in some extracurricular activities or part-time jobs, at different hours of the day while fulfilling their academic needs as well. And so for these reasons, I do feel that Louisiana Connections Academy would be a very valuable asset to our arsenal of virtual charter schools here in Louisiana for all students, regardless of age, background, socioeconomic status, whether or not they have exceptionalities or other learning differences. And I urge all of you to support adding this school to another option for Louisiana students and families. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Henry?
Yes. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Board, Superintendent Brumley. I'll be brief. I am Dana Henry, and I'm General Counsel for LACA, and I'm also representative of the charter board the charter organization that's applied for the application today. But I'm not here just as general counsel for the organization that wants to provide these high-quality education services. I've worked previously for Save the Children as an advocate, organizing parents who want high-quality options for our scholars around the state. I've also been blessed to work for the Urban League of Louisiana, where we develop policies to make sure that parents have quality options from birth to 12th grade. And we've done surveys, we've done studies over and over again since 2013. And the one common theme that we consistently saw was parents need options, and they need them now. They don't have time to do what many of us do, often sit around, set policy, put strategic plans in place to make sure that we really do not just hit our goals, but exceed them. They need quality options now. They don't all have the opportunities to go to brick and mortar schools. They're limited by their resources and their distance from urban districts that have a lot more resources. So I just want to implore the board today to consider this high-quality operator as a provider of education services to many parents and families and communities that would otherwise not have access. So on behalf of LAC and the board, I would ask that you all approve the charter application to provide those high-quality virtual services to our scholars and families.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Day, any further comments? Members? All right, hearing none, any opposition to the motion? Hearing none, motion passes. Next item, please.
Next item is on page 64, item 3.4, consideration of legislative auditor informational report entitled Structure and Use in Learning Pods in Louisiana, Elementary and Secondary Public Schools, Louisiana Department of Education, dated August 2nd, 2023. The recommendation is to receive the report.
Motion, please. Dr. Davis, and a second, Ms. Holloway. Superintendent? Dr. Davis?
Probably shocked none of you that this is an item that I asked to be added to the agenda. I would like to say that I appreciate the careful work of the Legislative Auditor's Office on this report and detailing many of the unintended consequences associated with the creation of learning pods. If you have not read this auditor's report, I would strongly encourage you to do so. While I believe that many of the outlined matters of consideration for legislative consideration could be dealt with by this board, right? It is within our powers to correct some of the oversight. I'm not asking us to go through and do all of those things. I've chosen to focus on two things. One matter that is very simple to resolve and another that really deserves our urgent attention. And so if I could have Mr. Thomas Lampert and Ms. Joan Hunt come to the table.
Dr. Davis, so why don't you start with me, and then if I need to, I'll
Okay, perfect. On page 73 of your packet, which is the matter for legislative consideration number 2, the legislative auditor says the legislature may wish to consider amending RS 174036.1 to make it mandatory that authorizers of learning pods provide information about the number of pods that are operating, their location, and the number of students attending them as part of their October 1 and February 1 student data collection. This would further allow LDOE to track the use of learning pods and add transparency to their use statewide. And so my question around this one is, in order to find this information, I had to file a Freedom of Information Act request to get the pod enrollment data. And so I guess my question would be, is it possible for the department to start collecting this data as part of our enrollment counts for October 1st and February 1st without legislative action?
So for one, this was not required, and so that's why we have so far collected this particular information. But yes, I mean, we can, through that process, if there is a desire of this board to collect information on modality of instruction, whether it's the traditional brick and mortar or learning pod, we can do that.
Okay, so do I need to ask for a motion to be made? Because it seems clear to me, right, that this is an easy one, right? The legislative auditor is telling us that this is a gaping hole in pod policy, that we don't know how many, that the department is not collecting, how many students are attending pods, or any of their demographic information. And so this seems like a really simple thing for us to do, to get on top of something before the legislature deals with a lot of the more complicated matters in this report. And so, so do we need to make a motion for you to, and vote on collecting that data, or is that not something the department is interested in doing?
I think that's just a matter of the board's preference here. I mean, we're happy to collect that information on who's pod, who's in the traditional main campus. But if the board chooses to do that, that's fine to me.
So I would like to make a motion that Bessie direct the department to make learning pod enrollment counts part of their enrollment data collection for the October 1st and February 1st student counts, and that the same data that is collected in that count for just the schools in general also be collected for pod students. So in particular, race, ethnicity, economic status, and IEP status.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'd like to substitute motion.
Okay, Ms. Holloway?
I'd like to add to this. Pardon?
Can we get a second on that?
Okay. All right, so got a second, Mr. Garvey? Go ahead, Ms. Holloway.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to direct the department to strongly monitor closely the data points that we can agree upon, and also do a study on our learning pods and bring this report, because it'll take you some time, and I'm asking that you take the school year to monitor, to study the data, and bring it back to us June of 2024.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand your motion. So in addition to Dr. Davis's motion, what you would add to that would be asking the department to monitor pods for 1 year. And then with regards to a study, can you provide a little bit more detail regarding your expectations?
Where are the pods located? What type of pods? Were they, whether it's the science math centers, which was a good suggestion in the legislative audit, they named a couple, but we need to know, where are the pods located? What are their focus? And whatever other data, Superintendent Bromley?
Ms. Jones?
Thank you so much, Chair. Just a point of clarification, is that different than Dr. Davis's report? What's the distinction?
The distinction is adding more to it, but giving them some time.
So it's really not a set substitute, supplemental, it's everything that Dr. Davis
Like
said
to
plus.
and to add to that, and give them some time to monitor, and whatever data you can bring forward to us.
Dr. Davis?
Okay, so I am willing to accept that as like a friendly substitute motion as long as the enrollment data starts being collected this year, right?
Everything.
So that, yes, so that can be part of the study by the department as it assesses learning pods in the state of Louisiana.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is the enrollment data would be recorded for this year. We would monitor for 1 year, and then this report would be due in 1 year. Is that correct?
End of the year, June,
Right.
June 2020. Sorry, June 2024.
Okay. We have a second for Ms. Holloway's motion. Mr. Garvey?
Okay, thank you. And then the second matter, which I think is more urgent, that deals with the page 78 of your packet, the matter for legislative consideration 6. The legislature may wish to consider amending RS 174036.1 to require learning pod locations to offer the same special education services as the main school campus. It may also wish to clarify whether schools may forbid students who need special education services from enrolling in the learning pod. And I would like to take this one in 2 parts, because I think the last part of it is easier for understanding purposes, which is it may also wish to clarify whether schools may forbid students who need special education services from enrolling in the learning pod. And so I would like some legal counsel to clarify whether or not that is not already a violation of federal statute. I mean, the way I think about it is if we thought of LSU as the main campus and LSU Eunice as a learning pod, a student with a hearing disability, right, if they went to LSU Eunice and asked to enroll in a course, LSU Eunice could not say, I'm sorry, we cannot serve you. You have to go to the LSU Baton Rouge campus because that is an equal access violation. And so forbidding, you're basically what this policy is saying, if you don't accept learning pod students who have significant disabilities, what you're telling them is if your child is too disabled, they are not able to access learning pods. And that appears to me in discussions that I've had as co-chair on the Special Education Advisory Panel, a clear violation of statute. And so I have really big concerns around the fact that the legislative auditor's report says that part of the vagueness around this is due to the department's policy, right? And I'm concerned that the schools that are opening learning pods, as well as the department, that if we do not correct this matter, we are opening up ourselves to legal consequences, but more importantly, we are denying students with disabilities accesses to what we have described as an innovation in our state.
Dr. Bowman, can you speak to that?
I mean, I think our position on this particular matter is we want to respect the autonomy of the schools. We want to respect the autonomy of the pods. We do believe, as our team believes, that a learning pod or a school that operates a learning pod cannot deny a student access to a pod because they have an exceptionality. But we also believe that some of the services that might be required might be needed. Those services may need to happen at the main campus. So I think we agree with you that you should not exclude a child with an exceptionality from access to a learning pod, but at the same time, some of those services, they may need to be delivered back at, say, the main campus as opposed to a particular pod.
And so that makes me very happy. So the question then becomes, what is the policy of the department, right, in terms of pod policies that are located on school websites which say, if it is determined that the pod cannot support the needs of the student, then the student shall be required to attend school at the main campus, right? So we have pod operators in the state right now that their posted policy is telling the parents of students with disabilities that if you're too disabled, you can't access a learning pod. And so from my perspective, right, what you just said, right, is the truth about the department's position on this. The department, right, needs to let pod operators know that the department believes that they are in violation of the law, and that when they come up for annual review, as well as renewal of their charters, right, part of what we assess them on is how they treat and educate students with disabilities, right? And that this is something that is going to negatively affect their renewal process and their annual reports because they are systematically excluding students with severe disabilities from their pod locations.
So again, I would say that we don't believe that a school can exclude a student with an exceptionality from a pod. But at the same time, we do appreciate that some of the services, for various reasons, may have to be delivered at a main site or something like that. And so we think that the pod should look, or the school should look at reasonable accommodations to be able to make those things happen. Understanding that that particular service may not be able to happen like directly there at that pod site.
So then, is it appropriate for us then to direct the department in a motion to notify pod operators that students may not be excluded from admission into a pod based on their exceptionalities while recognizing that services may need to be provided at the main campus and that the pod or the main campus is responsible for transportation, right, in order for students to access those services. These are type 2 charters, and so if the main campus is too far away, right, then we have the ability to do private contracting to provide IEP services, right, if they don't have a full-time staff member who can do that. But right now, right, it's pretty clear that we have pod operators who think that they don't have an obligation to serve these students.
So I mean, the pod effort is a new initiative. In many ways, it was birthed out of the pandemic and parents' desire for additional choices for kids. We want to make sure that that is part of our portfolio in this state. There was a lot of back and forth, give and take around the particular policy that Bessie ultimately voted on, as you well know, because of various potential for legislation, et cetera, and the desires of this board. And what ultimately passed at this board was what we felt like was in the best interest of everyone involved, because it was meeting the demand of the need from this board for us to come with a policy to successfully pass. And so that is what has passed. If the board has the will and the desire to change what has passed, then they'll just need to direct us to do that in policy.
I guess I am having trouble understanding why we need policy to tell pod operators that they have to follow already existing law and policy around the education of children with special education needs.
Well, I mean, we think we're fairly clear that you cannot exclude children with exceptionalities from a particular school setting. But again, as I stated earlier, we understand that there are times when that particular service may not be able to happen at the pod. So if there's a particular instance that we need to address or deal with, we can talk through how to do that. But our position is that you cannot deny a student with an exceptionality access to the pod.
So can I make a motion that Bessie direct the department to send letters to pod locations and operators in the state of Louisiana, informing them that, one, you may not exclude students with disabilities from accessing education in a learning pod. Two, that services that are not available at the learning pod site may be provided at the main campus with the LEA responsible for transportation to those services. And three, that the provision of IEP services at pod sites is part of the evaluation process for charter schools as well as for their renewals. And then the second part of that motion is to direct the department to assess whether or not IEP services are currently being provided to students at the existing learning pods, and to report back to us on the provision of those services prior to any renewals or I guess new charter school applications have to be made, so that this board can make those considerations in light of a complete picture of how students with disabilities are being treated. I'm sorry, that was a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot. I want to make sure I captured it correctly. So if you could help me out, just to make sure we understand what's on the floor, right?
Right.
So according to my notes, what I have is a motion asking the department to send letters to current pod operators that would make it clear that they cannot exclude special needs children from enrollment.
At the pod site.
At the pod site, right. Secondly, that services at the main campus, if the students are to be transported for the main campus to the main campus for those services, then the LEA is to provide transportation. Then I think you also mentioned in your earlier comments an option there might be to bring in a contractor to provide those services.
Yes.
Okay. And then what was the third?
And the third was around directing the department to do an audit of IEP services being offered at pod sites right now, so that we have a clear picture going into all of our charter evaluation process and renewal process around the provision of IEP services, which is part of the charter school renewal contract and evaluation process.
Okay, all right, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Is there a discussion?
You need to dispose of that, you already have the motion. Y'all need to dispose of that other motion before we make another one. Belinda made, or you need to vote on that one.
So the substitute motion by Sandy.
Yeah.
It was just a friendly amendment, correct? Yes, it's just a friendly amendment, so the motion is by Dr. Davis and Mr. Garvey.
But there's some comment on it first, so we do comment, take a vote, and then Belinda's next motion.
Okay, so let's, if we could, Ms. Holloway, if you would just refresh us on what this discussion is going to be in regard to.
I'm sorry, I cannot. It's quite a bit of whatever she's asking for, but can I make a comment or two about this? Am I at liberty before?
Sure.
Yeah, you can, but I
do
will say
want-
that policy does say regarding this, that the pods are an extension of the school and all state and federal laws would apply. So I think that's already a given in policy that the students should be eligible to attend. I mean, I think that'd be redundant to send a letter out. I mean, that's just my.
Well, that's what I wanted to add, that as an educator, it's understood. Like, I understand the state and federal law that should be, SPED students should be included. So that was just a tidbit. But I do want to say that we need to add not only charter is responsible for this, but public schools. There are pods in schools, in public settings, or career centers where students are leaving their main campus to go someplace else for an education priority for them. And so it's understood as an educator that they're receiving SPED services at their main campus if they cannot have that SPED service at another campus. So I just want you to understand that these things, Dr. Brumley, are occurring in schools throughout the state. And another example would be if I'm at the elementary school and this child needs support services and it's PE time, and this is the only time that he or she needs this particular SPED service, it will happen during his PE time. Will I remove him from PE the rest of the year? No. He has PE, but at that particular time of the day or the week, he has those SPED services. It just depends on the scheduling period of time for these children. So I just want to make that clear, that as educators, we make those accommodations happen because it's state and federal law. So.
Thank you, Ms. Holloway.
Sure.
So I think the motion on the floor with the amendment is that the department is going to address the enrollment concerns. They're going to monitor for 1 year, and they're going to conduct a study that's going to be due at June Bessie 2024.
Yeah.
Good. All right.
That's the first.
That's the first one, right? So let's work that one. So is there any additional discussion on that one? Okay, do we have any public comment on that one?
Yes, sir. Gary McGough, and I represent, the South Louisiana Charter Foundation, which has the Brazil Charter School, and Lafayette Charter Foundation, which has the Lafayette Renaissance Charter Academy. Both are referenced in the legislative report. I'd like to talk about the procedural aspect of this first. I believe these motions are a violation of the open meeting law. The agenda item is consideration of the legislative auditor informational report. It is not rulemaking or policy making. That has not been noticed. For you to take up these motions, you have to amend your agenda today by unanimous vote to be able to take these up. If you do so by unanimous vote, then you may take them up. But you would have to notice specifically what the motions relate to so that the public has adequate opportunity to address it. separate. Go ahead.
So that you all are, it's noticed to receive the report, and what you have done is issued some directives. It's not a policy, it's a directive. And you can do that because you are reviewing the report and noticing the recommendations of the auditor and directing the department to respond in response to those findings. So it is not a policy. If it were a policy, then we would notice it as a policy. It's just a directive for him to collect information.
Regardless of whether it's a directive, a policy, or a rule, it's not noticed. This is contemplating this board and this committee taking an affirmative vote to take some action which has not been noticed to the public and is not on your agenda. So regardless of what you call it, it's an action item by this committee, and so I believe it would be a violation of the open meeting.
Yeah, so we could love to get Ms. Joan Hunt.
We can have our attorney.
Amanda, great opportunity here.
Yeah, a directive can come out of any item or a request.
Hello, I'm Amanda LaGrew with the Attorney General's Office. I understand the concerns. My interpretation of this is a consideration of the legislative report. And I agree with Shan's interpretation of it is that this is constituting a directive in response to consideration of the legislative report.
Thank you for that interpretation. Members, do you have any questions for Amanda? Okay, hearing none, we'll resolve that one for now. Do you have any additional comments?
I do. In terms of the merits of the motion that is pending, it ignores a couple of things. One is the document immediately prior to the matters for legislative consideration is the Appendix C, LDOE's Learning Pods Pre-Opening Checklist, which has just been implemented in this last year, our rulemaking process, which we supported and agreed with. And it requires some of the very information that's being requested. Describe the student population of the learning pod, which method of instruction best describes the learning pod. Briefly describe any specialized program or curriculum that will be utilized. It requires the name and address of the schools or the location of the learning pods. So many of these things have already been addressed. Keep in mind that the report of the legislative auditor came out before we had a full year's experience with the rules that have been adopted so far. My clients have been attempting to comply with all of that because we support it. So I believe at this point there is no need for the action which is being proposed, and it should be on a regular agenda schedule so that everyone has an opportunity to discuss it and understand it before we're going to take a vote on it. Thank you.
Members, any further conversation? Yes, sir. Please identify yourself for the record.
Yes, I'm Wally Luce with Charter Schools USA, Louisiana, and we happen to run all the pods that were in the legislative audit, so I feel very good about discussing that. And a couple comments I would make. Number one is we really agree with the department that the statute was a very good statute, and it allows public choice to happen. We very quickly after it was enabled, we asked for rules. And I think Bessie remembers that at first y'all said you couldn't make rules, and then you came up with it. So we operated pods for a year and a half before there were any rules that existed. And we actually sat with the department. We think they've done a very good job at working through what those rules are, and there was a lot of time spent. We really do think that with the questions that went to the superintendent that the board should listen and work through it because it's very complex. If you read the legislative audit report, the biggest thing you probably saw was they talked about the ambiguity of what the law was, and then even ambiguity after that. So we really agree with everything. The first part is our attorney just mentioned. The first motion we're fine with because, I mean, it's already required. They already collect all of that data, and we do that every time we open a pod, and they've been going through that. So that data is all there. There didn't have to be a open records request. You could just ask the State Department, and they could give that data because we do that every year. The next part with the special ed, I think there needs to be more time thought through that and what that actually means. For instance, and Ms. Holloway mentioned this, in a public school district, and Dr. Bromley knows this as well, you don't do every service at every site. When you have students that need traits, you have different things, you have specialized places where you do that. And to say that because we're a district, I'm fine with saying that the home-based school has to supply those, and I like the answer that the superintendent gave, and I want to question where we go, because you literally could make this a poison pill, and there would be no pods with the way that's trying to be maneuvered. I think there needs to be time that's thought out. This needs to be, take the time that we took, just like we did making the rules. Those are very complicated. I think the superintendent could share with that. It took a long time to come to Bessie with it. Bessie spent a long time with the pre-opening checklist and the rules. They're very complicated. This is very ambiguous at first, and now I think we're where we are. We all want to meet the needs of all the special education students. There's several other groups that want to provide pods coming into this next year outside of our organization, and I think this board should support choice and do it in a way that meets all federal and state law. We totally support that, but there needs to be a thoughtful way and not just on the spot without discussion, thought processes on that. Thank you.
Members, comments? Dr. Davis?
I'd just like to point out that Appendix C, our learning pod, is a pre-opening checklist, and so it would not capture growth of pods and changes in student enrollment and their demographics while the pods continue to be in existence, right? And so it's a pre-opening checklist that it was referenced. And so I just failed to see why it is a big deal to ask pod operators to tell us in the report where we're collecting data, the number and the basic demographics of the kids who are being educated in learning pods. Like this seems to be just how many are there, how many are economically disadvantaged, how many have IEPs, what is their racial breakdown. We do this with every other school in the state.
Well, I think what I heard from the table was that they took no exception to the first item.
So, but I guess I heard that we already, saying that we already have that process is not accurate. We don't have that process right now. So that's just all I wanted to say, that the pre-opening checklist does not solve that. So I would appreciate what they say in the legislature's favorable passage of my motion.
But he's okay with that.
Okay. Ms. Orange Jones?
Follow-up, because I thought it was an interesting process point. Dr. Davis, can you just speak to the point about, did you have to do the open, were you struggling to get access to the data without the open meeting?
Yeah, I asked the department to give me the student enrollment and demographics of pods and was told that they did not have it. And so I had to file a Freedom of Information Act request to get the data on the pods in this last year. Not this school year, but the previous.
And the reason is because we don't collect, we previously had not collected that.
That's what I'm trying to change.
Members, any other comments? Okay, we have an amended motion on the floor. I understand there's no exception taken from the LEA representatives. So is there any exception to the motion?
Excuse me, I do object to the open meeting question that I raised earlier.
So I think what's on the floor right now is just the amended motion, which would include report on the enrollment, 1 year of monitoring, and the study that would include location and focus, and it would be due June of 24.
No, I see.
Okay, all right. So is there any exception from the dais? Hearing none, motion passes. Okay, that gets us to the second motion. So the second motion, let's go over that again to make sure we're aligned on the motion. My understanding is that the board would ask ask the department to send letters to the operators, to the pod operators, clarifying that they cannot exclude special needs students from being enrolled at the pods. Secondly, to clarify that the LEA is responsible for transportation to the main campus for services that cannot be provided at the pods, or those services could be provided by a contractor at the pod site. And then thirdly, to confirm that IEP services are provided today prior to any consideration for renewals or new applications.
Right, and so I want the assessment of IEP services at the pods done, I think I said by our October meeting, so that we have that data in hand before. I think is it our December meeting where we'll be making lots of decisions around this? Okay, so for the October meeting.
Need a second.
Do I have a second for that one? Okay, Dr. Bopey, got a second. Is there any exceptions to the motion? Mr. Miller? Any comments, Mr. Miller?
No.
Okay.
No, my
So,
Could you, if you don't mind, Mr. Morris, read that again so I can catch that? Sure. Because I want to make sure that we can deliver on all of this.
Okay. So my understanding is that the motion is to direct the department to send letters to pod operators that confirms that they may not exclude special needs students from enrolling at the pods, to confirm that services for special needs students that cannot be provided at the pods, that the LEA will provide transportation to the main campus for those services, or they'll contract with vendors to provide those services at the pod. And then thirdly,
Mr. Morris, on that one, just a thought, and I'm not trying to get into the merits of the motion, but I think Dr. Luce raises a good point on this particular issue, that it could be the main campus, it could be at the pod, it could be at a private provider, so I don't know that we would know, like, it's either got to be here or here. If you're talking about OT, for instance, it might be at an OT center, so that would be a little complicated the way that's worded.
So should we, so then change the motion to say that, that services that are not provided at the pod site will be provided by the LEA in an alternative manner, such as transportation to the main campus or contracting with a private provider for those services. So I think that is, I mean, so what I'm trying to get at is making sure that pods know that these services have to be provided, and they are responsible for making sure those IEP services are provided to those students. And so if that's their responsibility. And so it doesn't matter to me if it's at the main campus or it's at the pod site or if it's at a private contractor. It's just making sure that these children are being given the services that are required by law. That's it.
And also, I haven't looked at these particular charters. I'm not sure what it says about transportation. So transportation may or may not be a component initially of their charter. Mr. Gordon?
Yes, do we have the superintendent's suggestions on the motion finished? Or does the superintendent have any more suggestions on how to make the current motion work?
I'm only through listening to the second point of a lengthy motion. I can just tell you, overall, once you get into special education provisions, there's a lot of thought and consideration that has to go into anything when you're dealing with special education and student exceptionality, so make sure that we get that right.
Let me ask you this. What Dr. Davis is raising sounds like some reasonable issues that we should address. How long do you think it would take you, if you agree with my assessment, to come up with some language that would address Dr. Davis's concerns? Overnight or to the next Bessie meeting?
Certainly not overnight. I mean, but that's why I wanted to be clear at the beginning with Dr. Davis, and that we're at this point, we are pretty firm with standing around the notion that you cannot deny a student access because they have an exceptionality. But the location and manner of delivery of a service that are housed in the IEP could change based on the operation of the school and the needs of the family. So I think that any attempt from a school to deny access, we would certainly be opposed to that. We think it runs afoul of federal law. But at the same time, we recognize that the delivery of those services could look different.
So can I then think about a way to make my motion more amenable to flexibility on the part of that service provision, right? So could we say then that we are directing the department to send a letter to pod operators informing them that you cannot deny services, or that you cannot deny admission to a learning pod based on a child's exceptionalities, right, or their disabilities. So that's basically saying you cannot deny services at a learning pod because a child is a student with disabilities.
I would say here on this whole issue, though, that in the policy, I may need assistance from staff, but on the policy that was passed by this board last December, it says that if a required service is not available at a learning pod site, those services shall be provided to the main school, at the main school campus, or by other accepted alternative sites consistent with state and federal law. So there's already an expectation that with the policy the board's already passed.
So can you take the language out of that policy and put it in my motion? And I would like to believe, right, that what we have done is enough to fix this, but you can look, and I have been harping on this for over a year, and I cannot get this policy, pod policy, on one of our charter school operators changed. It says, if it is determined that the pod cannot support the needs of a student, then the student shall be required to attend school at the main campus, right? That is on the website. Parents look at this and they say, my child cannot access this pod because there is a policy posted on the website telling them that they cannot.
So we may just be, not trying to speak for you, but we may just be simply at the department sending a clarifying letter on this special education issue, as opposed to 4 or 5 points.
So
A clarifying letter that simply details what's in the policy.
that's what I'm trying to get done. And so if we can send them a letter that says they cannot deny the access to a child based on their disability, and then quote the language from our own policy that is already there that explains that we expect them to provide those services, right, the IEP services. I'm fine with the language that you just read. And then third, that for the October meeting, that the department present to us an audit of the IEP services that are being provided for students who are at the pod sites. I don't want to be so convoluted that
We should not be telling schools what they can and can't do, because policy is in place for state and federal laws.
Ms. Washington?
I just need a point of clarification. Okay, so the only operators in the state running POC right now are you guys. Okay. And you guys, I assume, are the ones who have on the website what Belinda just said. That's your website?
Yes.
Okay. So do you agree with how Dr. Brumley and Dr. Davis are interpreting the law right now? Like, do we have the same understanding? Is this a technical cosmetic issue, or is this like a fundamental misunderstanding or disagreement?
I agree with the verbiage that Dr. Brumley is using and don't necessarily with how Dr. Davis is. And this is where I see there's a little bit of difference. I do completely agree that we have to serve every student that has a disability. So that part is very clear and wrong. What I think is not is how when you have 3 different modalities, you have online, blended, and face-to-face. Talk to even the new, potentially Louisiana connections, but talk to UVA, talk to the K-12. How do they meet the needs of all special education students? You don't do it at certain locations. And what I mean by that, you don't provide a nurse and an LPN and a one-on-one aide if someone's home to do virtual education. But you do meet their needs. If we have a brick and mortar school, we do that. How does every school district even deal with this? I think that's the part that the superintendent was making, how complex this is. That yes, we need to meet the needs of every student, but meeting the needs, their faith is it's not best to put a kid in a 10-person pod. If they need certain services, it's best to have them placed in a different setting. That's what our special education directors do every day. You work through those issues, and most school systems have certain schools that provide services that are beyond the normal type of special education services. But we do almost, I mean, I can't even hardly think of a student that we haven't met at a pod that's asked to go to it, but we have that just like all of your virtual schools do and whatever, that in some cases, and I think that's where the clarifying point is, I do agree with Dr. Brumley, it's administrative discretion sometimes on where you can serve, how you serve. I mean, all of our speech that's done online, our OTPT, how do we do that with providers? So I just think it's rather complex.
Yeah.
It needs some more thought process. We totally believe actually with the concept of what both of them are saying, we should meet the needs of all of the students, but I think it's more complex in laying that out, and I think it's within the policy that took a lot of time, not on something that's just hastily done.
So what about Mr. Garvey's question, and do you think that there's a way to get this written in a way that aligns with what everyone says they agree with by the next BESI meeting?
Well, we certainly could try. I think that the policy already spells out most of the issues that are in question here. Like, there's no doubt in my mind, unless I'm convinced otherwise at some point, that learning pods have to accept students with exceptionalities if that's what's in the best interest of the child, and that's what the IEP says that they need to be doing. I also believe that they have to find a way to provide special education services according to the IEP. And I think our policy that this board already approved says that. I think what Dr. Davis is trying to accomplish here is saying, follow the policy. Make sure that the policy is being followed. There aren't exceptions to following this policy. And I think what Mr. Garvey and you, Ms. Orange-Jones, and Dr. Lutz are saying is maybe we need some time to work together to try and figure out some of the nuance behind this. I can't tell you I can solve that by October because even the policy itself took us a year working together with many of you on this board and with them. But we can begin a process of trying to work through it. And we can give you an update at the October meeting.
Do you believe that the website, how it's framed in the website aligns with the intent of the policy?
I think that probably, and I'm just looking at the audit report like you are, I think that this particular language used probably should not have been used in this particular way.
Okay. Do you accept that?
I actually accept that, we'll take that down.
So if I may summarize for clarity here, the current understanding is that the current policy does capture Dr. Davis's concerns. The concern that's raised is the policy being adhered to. And so if the department sends a letter reminding the operator of the policy, and then we come back in October and the department has in fact basically determined if they're in compliance or not by providing or confirming that the IEP services provided today meet the needs of the students.
That would be fine with me, right? So a letter that reminds them of existing policy around IEP service provision that cautions them that students have to be given access, equal access to learning pod services, right? Or access, you usually say access to learning pod services. And then the third part is for the department to bring us in October
an assessment of IEP services that are being offered at pods right now, right? So kind of an audit to make sure if we have kids with IEPs, are they being provided those services?
Okay.
That's it.
Superintendent Bromley, any comment?
We have like 2 weeks to do this when we look at our deadlines for meeting the October agenda, because we all show up at this particular meeting and we're like, we just think that things are here, but for us and our timelines to load board docs and all that, we have like 2 to 3 weeks from this meeting to do that. So I am happy to comply with this or do my best, but just understand that it may be an update report in October and not some type of final product. Because I just don't know that it's reasonable.
Sure, I would be fine with getting just like a first glance at October, and then if we could just make sure that if it takes the final report for December, that we have that report, and that is discussed before we look at charter school renewal applications, so that we're going in with all the data necessary to make a really informed decision. That's it, that would be just fine, thank you.
All right. I'm going to reach out to Ms. Davis for some help with protocol now. Where we are with regard to motions on the floor and proceeding forward with this
I
current
think I
review.
need clarification on what the motion is now. Like, have you reverted to something different? I think she meant something.
So the current, good, Sean. So
Yeah, I've heard that, but have you revised that in your request now?
So my request is that the department send learning pod operators the existing policy around service provision for students with IEPs, right? That they reiterate that access to learning pods should not be denied students based on their exceptionalities. And then the third part of that is that the department will collect as much data as they can for the October meeting around IEP service provision at our learning pods. And then a more formal report will come in December.
All right, can I get a second? Mr. Garvey? Is there any opposition to that motion?
They would speak before you take the vote.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, sir, public comment, please.
Thank you. In general, I'm supportive of the motion. The one provision that I'm concerned with is the prohibition or the denial of access to pods due to exceptionality. That would be setting a policy, for one. Number two, it kind of trumps the IEP FAPE least restrictive environment criteria that you're supposed to use for these children. The whole point of the IEP is to determine what's the free and appropriate public education they're entitled to, and what's the least restrictive environment. It may not be the pod location, number one. Number two, you do not enroll in a pod. You enroll at the base school that the pod is affiliated with. And if the pod is appropriate for the student, and the student makes that choice with his parents, then the pod is maybe the appropriate place to go. This motion, including that language about the denial of access to pods due to exceptionality, that's the point that I would have a concern with. I would ask that that be amended out of the motion. The rest of the motion is fine.
Dr. Davis.
So can we keep it, and then I can confer with either Ms. Hunt or Superintendent Brumley around any changes to that language that need to be made, and we could do that at the board meeting tomorrow? Is that appropriate?
I recommend that, I know you didn't ask me, but I do recommend that you don't put in a letter what they cannot do. I think that opens us up to a lot of, Bessie in particular, if it's at the directive of Bessie, a lot of repercussions. I would recommend that if he's going to send a letter, that he just copy and paste the policy.
Right.
And please be reminded, as this applies to the special ed students, that you must be in compliance with state and federal law. I just have concerns about saying a student cannot be denied, because that could be.
Yeah, and I think that is a point of clarity here, like that would be my intent, because this is already stated in the policy that the board approved of.
So if I remove that part of it, Are you gonna change the policy on your website so I can quit stroking out, like how you're describing your access to pods? Okay, thank you. All right, you can take the part that everybody.
I actually have in listening to the feedback that you all have, I know we do assurances. We already had on the agenda earlier today with our educator preparation programs, signed assurances around what they are expected to do. And I know this is a tool that already exists, and so Superintendent Brownlee, I think this is something that you can work into your existing body of work relative to the assurances. I mean, we have the report from the auditor, we have the tools around the assurances. That's an existing way that we've already exercised once today to be able to act on these issues that we all know are so very important.
All right. Yes, sir, Dr. Luce?
Just one comment, I really do appreciate the thoughtfulness and where this is going. And just want to make a comment with special education in general, that there were questions about, we were audited with every single student in every pod. I was a superintendent for 9 years. When we have had special education audits, they typically pull samples. We have went through that completely on multiple occasions and had to bring all IP folders from the pods to the main campus and have done this in detail with laborious hours of time. And it would come out very well with the department doing that. So I just want to mention that the department is doing more on pods than they have done scrutiny on any public school, any other public school that we have. I just want that to be very clear. If anybody thinks there's not, there's more scrutiny placed on that. Every single IP folder has been checked, there's been questions on, and there's been detailed analysis from the department.
Thank you for that feedback. Dr. Davis, are we good with the motion going forward? All right, Ms. Shan Davis, are we good with the motion going forward? All right, members, is there any exception to the motion? Hearing none, the motion passes. Before we conclude, members, I have one other conversation point. I want to take a moment of privilege here. I've had discussions with several of you with regard to the scope of the work within the SIT committee. So school innovation and turnaround, the primary focus of this committee, as long as I've served on this board, has been focused on charter school management, which has added a lot of value to the students in our state. But with the technology that's available today, with all the conversations about artificial intelligence and the regional hub of instruction that we've seen introduced in Calcasieu Parish now, and the broadband expansion throughout our state, there are a lot of other innovative approaches that either we should be considering or that are actually in the field today. There's just not enough discussion about them. So I'm really interested in any thoughts you may have with how we could broaden the scope of this committee. My suggestion, after conversation with several members, is that we would ask the department to provide feedback to the board at a minimum of 4 times annually with an update on either innovative approaches that they're working on in the field already or new innovative approaches that they would like to introduce to students in our school. So interested in any feedback you might have. Mr. Melvin?
I support that. I'll make a motion.
I second it.
We definitely don't have an item for this.
Okay, we're gonna need roll call.
Specific, like broadband, micro centers, AI.
We're gonna have to get a unanimous, if we're gonna add it, Ms. Morris. If not, then can we put it on, we'll put it to the October agenda. We'll have unanimous consent.
Yeah, you can request of me that an item be added to the October agenda.
Or we could vote on it now unanimously and have the option. Can
Why
do
not
that.
take any votes?
And take any,
No, because you don't have a notice.
of
If
intent.
they can amend the agenda, you can.
Oh, you can, if you want to amend.
Let's
the
amend.
agenda.
Right, that's what I'd
Are
like
they
to do.
supposed to do that at the beginning of the meeting though?
Mr. Morris.
They can amend the agenda by unanimous vote to consider this, but you have to have public comment on it as well.
Okay.
Mr. Melvin?
Yeah, let's
Amend.
see if we can amend it via unanimous vote.
All right, we've got a motion on the floor to amend the agenda to include this item, and I've got a second. Is there any discussion? Mr. Garvey?
Yes, to amend the agenda, it doesn't have to be an emergency. We can do it for any reason.
Can you give me just 1 second? I'm gonna double check. I believe it's unanimous vote by the board. For any reason, I think the designation is only that there's a public comment on the agenda item that the board amends.
We need the item.
While you're researching, we can move forward with the motion and the public comment.
Can you give me a title of the item?
Ryan, what's the time?
I guess the title would be just expanded scope of the city committee.
There you go.
That's correct. Just public comment, unanimous vote.
Okay, great. All right, we've got a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any public comment?
We have to take a vote.
I'm sorry. Roll call vote, please.
Sorry. No.
Okay. This is to include on the city agenda to consideration to expand the scope of the city meeting, right?
I think that was the expand scope of the city agenda, a minimum of 4 times a year, to include an update on existing innovative approaches.
To add the item.
That's right, but I want to make sure that we're saying that it's going to be a minimum of 4 times a year.
We want to amend the agenda.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's the first.
Got it, thank you for
Yes,
that.
don't be-
Thank you for that.
Okay, roll call vote. Dr. Volpe?
Yes. To amend the agenda.
Right. The discussion on the floor is to amend the agenda, we need a unanimous vote to do that.
Dr. Volpe?
Yes.
Volpe votes yes. Mr. Castillo?
Yes.
Mr. Castillo, yes. Dr. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Davis, yes. Ms. Ellis?
Yes.
Ms. Ellis, yes. Mr. Garvey?
Yes.
Mr. Garvey, yes. Ms. Holloway?
Yes.
Ms. Holloway, yes. Mr. Mallory?
Yes.
Mr. Mallory, yes. Ms. Orange Jones?
Yes.
Yes. Ms. Orange Jones. Mr. Rock? Yes. Mr. Rock, yes. Ms. Boyd is not in attendance. You have a motion passed.
Thank you. Now we proceed, we've got a motion on the floor, and we have a second. Ask for public comment. Is there any public comment on this item? Hearing no public comment, is there any opposition to the motion? Hearing none, motion passes. Next item, please.
I'll tell you later. The motion to amend the agenda has passed. Now, if you would like to make another motion.
That's what we just did.
That's what we just did.
We just voted on the.
What's the motion?
We did not state it.
No.
We have to amend the agenda first.
We did.
Okay, reread what you want the agenda item is.
Okay.
We have had it.
We did.
Exactly.
What do you want to do under that item?
Okay.
We gotta keep doing. What's the
Motion to
action?
approve.
No, you have
Mr. Miller, I think you were offering a motion.
Yeah.
You want to keep the original motion?
Four times
Motion
a
to
year.
approve at least 4 times a year the expanded scope of the city agenda.
Okay.
Ms. Holloway seconded. There was no opposition. Motion passed. Next item, please. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Proceed.